Thank you. I may or may not have left them on my house. Motion last time, so.
Good evening, everybody. This is Seth Engelborg, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. We're meeting today, Thursday, August 7th, 2025 at 5 p.m. for the meeting of the Conservation Commission in a hybrid fashion. Some people physically present in the Nantucket Public Safety Facility Community Room and some on Zoom. The first thing we're going to do today is establish a quorum of members. Members, when you can hear me, please respond in the affirmative. Mike Miserelli?
Here.
RJ Turcott?
Here.
Joe Plandowski?
Here.
Tim Brain?
Here.
John Schaefer?
Here.
Linda Williams? On the phone call, but we need to move them from attendees to panelists. So, Linda Williams, can you hear us? All right, well, we'll circle back to that. So, the next thing we need to do is to go over the continuances on our agenda tonight. We have the following. Under notices of intent, section B, no waiver required. We have the land bank, SC 48, 3893, Smooth Hummocks Way, continued till August 21st. Section C, waiver required pre-January 1st submissions. We have Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, 59 through 83 Baxter Road, SC 48, 3759, continued to August 21st. We have the Summer House of Nantucket Realty Trust, 10 and 16 Ocean Avenue, SC 48, 3824, continued till September 4th. And we have West Assured LLC, 62 Winoma Way, SC 48, 3869, continued till August 21st. In the public meeting, under orders of conditions, we have Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, 59 through 83 Baxter Road, SC 48, 3759, continued till August 21st. And that's all that are aware to me, unless, Will, you have any others?
That is correct, as far as I know, as far as right now.
All right. With that being said, Commissioners, we need a motion to accept the agenda. Is there such motion? Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We need to do a roll call vote. Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams. Yeah, go ahead.
Linda, I don't know if you can hit *6 and try that, but still says she's muted, but
Seth Engelborg votes aye. We'll have that motion carry 6 in the affirmative with 1 abstained at this point. So we'll move on in the agenda to public comment. These are for items not on tonight's agenda. We'll be holding to the select board's established protocol for public comment, limiting commenters to 3 minutes or less, and not taking substantive, or only taking testimony for future review, not engaging in substantive discussion or deliberation. At this time, any audience members physically present in the room wishing to make a public comment, please approach the mic and do so. Or any participants on Zoom, raise your hand virtually and we will address you. Seeing none of either, we'll move on to the public hearing. And we will begin under notices of intent, section B, no waiver required, Nantucket Islands Land Bank, 41 Jefferson Avenue, SC 48, 3910. Will, do we have everything we need to close this application?
I believe we do. If Liz can hear me, did you get an HESP for this, or did we even need it?
I will. Yes, we do have it now.
Okay, so
Awesome, thank you.
this application has been previously reviewed by this board, and given our new procedures, we're not required to have another review unless any commissioners or members of the public wish to. At this time, do any commissioners wish to further review this matter? Do any members of the public wish to further review this matter? Seeing not, Liz, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike and Joe, for the second. I see that Commissioner Williams is here in person at 5:06 p.m. So we don't need to do a roll call vote at this moment because all commissioners are physically present. So commissioners, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain or recuse? No, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And we will move on in our agenda to notices of intent waiver required. We'll begin with the Sanctity Golf Club, Inc., 18 Hoyks Hollow Road, SE 483911, represented by Leo Asadorian. Leo, are you with us? I don't believe so. So at this moment, we will skip past that application and we will move on to the next one, which is the Nantucket Conservation Foundation on Code 2, SC 483914, represented by Art Gasparo. Art, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm before you tonight with a notice of intent application for the relocation of an existing structure over on Code 2, which is owned and operated by the Nantucket Conservation Foundation. It serves as what's known as the ranger station out there. And the edge of the structure is getting quite close to the water at this point. And we believe that both environmental and functional interests are best served by relocating the structure at this time before it's actually in danger there from the water. And so on the plan before you, what we've shown is to pick that structure up and move it landward within the area shown. And so we've established a limit of work for disturbance, which is shown in green. There are existing sand tracks that serve this area, which are typical of Great Point and Code 2. And we would leave. There's an existing boardwalk and set of stairs. So we would propose to leave that and then just add a little connector piece that goes through what is currently the screened porch, so that there's still a way to walk through what will become restored and vegetated area and walk from the sand track driveway and from the relocated structure out to the coastal beach. And we believe that would be a benefit by limiting the pedestrian activity to that area. We're proposing to bring in some clean, compatible sand fill to restore the area within the under the existing structure. You can see from the topography shown on the plan, there's a bit of a hollow there. It's just a couple of feet, but what we would like to do is put in temporarily a couple of rows of anchored fiber rolls that the sand could rest against, and then we would plant that area with American beach grass and work on essentially what would be a mini dune rest beat coastal area restoration project. And then what we would propose is that once we would monitor that and provide reports to the commission, and once that is well established, then we could remove those core logs from that area, right? Just in that limited sort of gap, if you will, where there's a low area. Also proposed is an elevated observation platform to help, again, the ranger function in this area. So that's shown off to the west just a little bit. Think sort of lifeguard stand, simple type of structure that with a wooden ladder that they could climb up and get some elevation there to be able to see out over Code 2. And the relocated structure would be supported on driven timber pilings. We're proposing to access the site with some equipment to do the move and the installation, and that would all be over the existing sand tracks. We would install symbolic fencing along the green line shown on the plan. We've also filed with Natural Heritage for this application and are waiting a response from them. So ultimately, we will request a continuance tonight. And I also owe you a waiver request for this project, and that would be based on long-term net benefit by the relocation of the structure further away from the coastal bank and the coastal beach resource area. That being said, the project in its entirety is located within coastal dune and mapped barrier beach area. We're not proposing, well, I guess the only increase of structure, very technically, I think, would be that boardwalk piece that is within an existing screened porch. But once that's moved, that would be probably about a 30 square foot connector piece. But again, I believe serves a function of limiting that pedestrian activity to that area. And then the elevated platform, which essentially would be probably somewhere on the order of about 5 by 5 and elevated such that, vegetation could continue to grow underneath it. We believe that overall the project does represent a net benefit in helping to, especially the purpose, where these are the rangers that work for the foundation that keep an eye on all of what's happening out there on Code 2, and also from the increased separation distance from the water, along with the restoration of that disturbed area. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions or concerns. And like I say, after we hear any of your comments or those from the public, we would request a continuance. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? Yep, John, go ahead.
Hi, Art. I didn't quite hear what you said you're going to set the building on in the new location. I didn't quite catch that. What was it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be driven timber pilings. So probably 8 by 8 pilings. The structural engineer is working on that right now. So we would use a track excavator with a vibratory head to put those in, and that way there we wouldn't have to excavate, and we believe that would be less disturbance than trying to put concrete piers in out there.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Yep, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Art, my question is really just on the proposed elevated observation platform. Do we have a height that's going to be, or a design, I guess, is the question, or is it just a simple deck structure, railings, et cetera?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't actually have a design of that. I could follow up with the NCF staff. It's sort of something that we were just envisioning that would greatly assist them out there, but we haven't established a full design. Two ideas that had been kicked around were something similar to like at the life-saving station. It's sort of a crow's nest type of on a pole up then that, has essentially like a basket type area, and or whether it would be something more like lifeguard stand. So again, elevation wise, I would envision that it's probably 10 feet above grade, something like 8-10 feet, but we certainly could get you a little more details on that if you'd like.
It would be helpful. I mean, just because of the sensitive nature of the area, I'm sure we're not going to have a problem with it, but we've asked other applicants to
give us that courtesy as well. So just keeping it all together. Thank you.
We will work on that.
Anyone else? Yeah, just to piggyback off that comment, I'm not against the purpose of the elevated platform, but I'm wondering if it's possible to move the location to have it over to where the relocated structure is, to have all of the structural elements in the same area. I understand that it's 1 foot higher in elevation where it's proposed now, but I feel like it could just be incorporated into part of the structure or right next to the structure to minimize the additional impacts with that.
We can through you, back to you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly discuss and revisit that. I think that we were thinking that we wouldn't want the structure to interfere with some of the views, but either way, we'll analyze that and get back to you either with a relocated position or further justification for the position as shown.
Thank you. Anyone else? Members of the public wishing to speak, now is your opportunity. You can approach the microphones in person or raise your hand virtually. I don't see any. So we'll move to a continuance, but before that, I think that we should do a site visit just for the fact of how beautiful this location is. And it'd be great if the town of Nantucket or the Nantucket Conservation Foundation would bring us out in one of their boats over there, because it's a nice spot of the island. I've been up there a few times. It's a nice place. But other than that, if nobody has anything else to add, a continuance has been requested. Would you like to continue till August 21st?
Yes, please.
This will continue till August 21st. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on in the hearing. And we'll now well, actually, we need to figure out Sankaty Golf Club. Leo Asadorian, are you here? Is anybody representing Sankaty Golf Club here? Seeing not, we are going to make a unilateral continuance of that application to August 21st. So the Sankaty Golf Club Inc. at 18 Horks Hollow Road, SC 48 3911 will be continued to August 21st. And now we will move on in our agenda to amended orders of conditions, no waiver required, which we have one, and that is East Lincoln Avenue Realty Trust at 16 Wall Street and 2 East Lincoln Avenue, SC 48 3906, represented by David Haynes. David, good evening.
David, sorry, through you, Seth.
Yes.
I think David is also trying to attend via phone. We just figured it out in the lobby
they're
that,
in the attendees list, so.
yeah, but we can't get anybody via phone to talk due to a glitch outside of my control that basically I think IT hosted our meeting as a webinar
Okay.
instead of a meeting. So the phone people cannot speak. So
All right.
Linda's listening and she's going to sign the cert.
That's fine. Okay, well, in that case, Mr. Haynes, if you can hear us and are able to move to a device other than a phone using a non-call-in method, we can reopen this amended order later in the hearing. But for now, what we'll do is continue East Lincoln Avenue Realty Trust at 16 Wall Street and 2 East Lincoln Avenue, SC 48 3906 to August 21st. With that, we will be moving on to the public meeting. We'll start with orders of conditions and amended orders of conditions for no waiver required. First one we have is Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 41 Jefferson Avenue, SC 48 3910. Will can get this up on the screen. These were also sent out to commissioners via email.
Is this the one and only?
The what?
Is it the one and only?
Order?
Yeah.
No, we got to talk about Plover.
Oh yeah, I was not counting that in my head. I was thinking like the standard biz. All right, so 41 Jefferson. This was the land bank application for the extension of the existing boardwalk for ADA access within coastal beach and buffer zone to coastal dune. No waiver required for the project because it's water dependent. The area was within NHESP habitat, but they've received their NHESP letter. We had conditions 18 and 19 here. I wasn't sure if we want anything else on that, and then no waiver.
Commissioners, comments, questions, additions? If not, is there a motion to approve as drafted?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Mike and RJ for the second. We should still do a roll call vote in case Linda figured out another way to attend. So Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Okay, good. Seth Engelborg, aye. That
You
carri-
actually heard me?
Yes, we heard you.
Oh my God.
That carries unanimously. So thank you, Linda, for joining us.
I've been here all along, guys.
I know, but I'm glad. I shouldn't say thank you. I should say thank the Zoom tech lords for making it work. But yes, that carries.
David Haynes may be able to get on then because we were both having the same problem. So track back to David and see if he can get back on.
That carries unanimously.
And Linda, you now have to dial *6 to mute again. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
We'll circle back with David, and we can always revisit his application later if he decides to join. Technology. So we'll move on. We had a lot of things that didn't close. Our next order of conditions or amended order of conditions is in section C, waiver required. This is Act 2 LLC at 14 Plover Lane. And this has been held over, and Will, do you want to give us an update about this?
Sorry, just loading that up. Here, let me grab. I might have to go into my email just to grab the order real quick, but so we are in receipt of a proposed deed restriction from Attorney Wood's office, and our counsel, Attorney Pucci, has been able to review it, as well as their like real estate specialist, Vicky Marsh, and they recommended that we accept the deed restriction with some language added to our order. They also added some language. I don't have my work email on this computer, but they were looking to add some seemingly pretty standard language to the drafted deed restriction that was basically just in reference to.
It's just basically a request to add the Conservation Commissioner's signatures to the deed restriction.
Right.
Saying that we've accepted this restriction. That's the gist of it.
And with like a notary acknowledgement
Yes.
block, basically.
Sealed.
That's, I just found it, but
Witness and sealed acceptance of that essentially is the point of the language. So yes, we are in receipt of the draft deed restriction that Attorney Wood has presented on behalf of his client. We are in receipt of a legal opinion from town council that the deed restriction as written is legally sufficient and would be enforced in perpetuity on the basis of Massachusetts general law.
As long as it's held by a
As long
commission.
as it is as long as it's held by the commission and goes through the process that's being laid out by town council, that we would
Right.
accept it and have it recorded on the deed, then it wouldn't be subject to the normal expiry of 30 years that
Correct.
deed restrictions typically are subject to. It would be enforceable in perpetuity, and town council is in agreement of that. We have, the path before us is to decide if that is sufficient to us, which I personally think it is sufficient. But if commissioners at this point don't feel like that is sufficient, we have alternatives. Then there's a separate matter about the civil penalty that is being enforced. We have been advised by our town council to add one condition into the order of conditions that indicates that the civil penalty has been assessed and agreed upon. And that would go into the order of conditions for the amount of $11,100, so that it would be enforceable by us if they decided not to pay that penalty. And then the last matter that we haven't received an opinion on, but I think we can handle at an administrative level, is there have been requests from commissioners to try to ascertain whether that civil penalty could go into a conservation purpose rather than just the general fund. We don't have an answer to that. I don't think we necessarily need an answer to that right now. I think we could just add a finding onto the order of conditions that says the town of Nantucket staff and town council will look into this and provide us options for doing that. Yeah, Will, go ahead.
I did just want to note too, but you probably saw this, we also have George here.
Yes.
So.
Yes, town council attorney George Pucci is present if we have questions for him. So at this time, commissioners, any questions or comments? Yeah, RJ, go ahead.
So thank you. Through you to Attorney Pucci, how are we going to keep tabs on this property going forward? Thank you.
George, good evening. Feel free to address that.
Yes, good evening. And actually, Seth, we had, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is George Pucci from KP Law. And actually, we did opine on the general fund issue. We don't see any way that the civil penalty would not go into the general fund.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
Yeah, under these circumstances. So that kind of nips that one. In terms of monitoring compliance, I mean, you're only going to be able to do it the way you normally would, is that, you know, viewed from a public way, any abutter that reports anything, issues like that. I mean, you don't have any, you know, inspection rights to go on to the property, you know, on your own. You could always request permission from the property owner to go on and do an inspection. I wouldn't want to, you know, you wouldn't want to do it in a, you know, overly burdensome manner. But I really don't have a great answer for you about that to monitor compliance. You'll monitor it the way you would monitor potential violations on any property. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes violations can occur without anyone really knowing about them until it becomes too late. So I really don't have a great answer for you from a legal perspective of how you can continue to, you know, ensure compliance. I mean, the property owner has done the after the fact notice of intent, presumably has been well educated on what they're allowed to do and not do. They're going to have a deed restriction recorded against the title to the property, which, you know, restricts activities in the designated area. So beyond that, you know, hopefully there won't be enforcement issues that arise in the future, but that's about the best you can do, is you'd have to monitor it the way you do any property.
Thank you, Attorney Pucci. I'll let Commissioner Turcotte respond, but I think I know what he's getting at. So RJ, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is This has been part of my concern all along and why I think this is an inferior option to the conservation restriction. If the Conservation Commission holds a conservation restriction, we are legally allowed and required to go onto the property and inspect it and have a detailed record of what's there and make sure that these things are being done in perpetuity. And that's why since the beginning, I have been pushing for a conservation restriction instead of a deed restriction, because it wouldn't be an issue. We wouldn't have to ask permission, we wouldn't have to wait for the neighbors, staff, or a designated commissioner could do the inspection each year and just go there, walk the property, make sure everything is going the way it should be, it's growing back, it hasn't been altered in any way, and the detail is unmatched. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one word needs to be changed there. It's not could do the inspection, it's shall do the inspection. We would be legally required on at least an annual basis to inspect that property. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Aren't they going to be reporting on this anyways because of the remediation for at least the first 3 years or so?
Yes,
Right?
thank you for the question. While the order of conditions remains open, we retain the rights, just like we do in any property, to go on to the property and ensure that they're in compliance with that order. But after they close out that order and there's no active permits, let's say in 2075, a violation happened, it would be, what Attorney Pucci is saying, the only way we could understand if that violation happened is from abutter reports or a public way looking at it. But so yeah, I mean, I do agree with Commissioner Turcotte that a conservation restriction is a stronger long-term solution. It's up to us to determine if that solution is required in this case or not, or we think the deed restriction is sufficient.
Yeah, I should note too, the conservation restriction is an option. In my opinion, it's above and beyond for this situation. It's more cumbersome to go through that process, and keep in mind, and this is in perpetuity because it's being held by a public entity. In other words, that restriction would ordinarily expire after the time limit. This is going to be in perpetuity under the statute that it's being filed under. It's going to be recorded against the property. And what I was referring to was what you talked about, Seth, the potential future violations. But certainly when they're complying with the order and they're seeking compliance with the order, in addition to probably coming back for a certificate of compliance at some point, you're going to have inspection rights to make sure that the remediation is done in a proper way. And then the future, again, you'd have to monitor compliance the way you would any ordinary property. And I just wanted to remind the commission, you always want to take into account as well constitutional concerns about going onto a property owner's property. So even though you have the right to inspect, you definitely want to be notifying the property owner and making sure that everyone's in agreement when you're going to do an inspection of that property. And that constitutional concern would be present now and it would be present later, no matter what type.
Yes, we're
document.
well aware of that, and I've always taken those concerns into account.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll go to John again, and then we'll go to Tim.
Yeah, Mr. Pucci, so to this point, we have a cooperating violator, but they were pretty clear they didn't really want to go the conservation restriction route. So if we decided to do that, how difficult could the process become?
Yeah, then you'd need approval for it. And, again, I mean, we can give a formal opinion about what's required for a conservation restriction, but it goes beyond this situation. What you really want is, and again, even the deed restriction is going above and beyond, because you're having conditions ordered in the order of conditions that are going to be enforceable. And they're going to need a certificate of compliance at some point. So you are already going above and beyond with the deed restriction, in my opinion. And conservation restrictions are really not the type of instrument to use to remedy an enforcement issue, of an encroachment into a certain area. Conservation restriction is for other types of restrictions that something is being, restricted for, a public purpose. I mean, here you're restricting the area to make sure that you have no further violation on that property, which is different than the normal situation when you're having a conservation restriction.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't personally agree with all those points, but I understand what you're saying. I think we have sufficient guidance in our Nantucket Wetlands bylaw that says either of these solutions are allowed as security. I don't agree with the fact that it would be going above and beyond. This is a standard recourse available to us that's written in the bylaw. But yeah, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, if it were a conservation restriction, would it be a member of the Conservation Commission would have to inspect, or would it be Natural Resources?
That all would have to get figured out. It would depend on who the actual holder was, if it was the town of Nantucket holding it, or if it was specifically the Conservation Commission, it would depend. I do think the process, no, I don't think, I know for sure that the process of creating a conservation restriction is much more difficult than just accepting this deed restriction.
Gotcha.
And I know for sure also that in perpetuity, it's much more enforceable. Our job is to determine if that extra level of enforcement is required to protect the resources under the Wetlands Protection Act and the performance standards of those resources that we regulate. Or if we're just, we're supposed to use whatever tools are available to us, but we're not supposed to be overburdening on applicants. So if we were to go on any specific route, we would need to have a clear justification as to why. And then, Tim, is there anything else on that?
Yeah, so if it's a deed restriction, then basically, if there's a violation, we would only know if a neighbor reported it, and then we'd have to go through a process of checking it out and so on.
Yeah, we would go through the normal enforcement order process
Right.
where violations would be checked by the town of Nantucket conservation agent.
Right.
They would be independently verified. If a violation did exist, we would go through the enforcement order process to have the cease and desist, the owner appear, all the standard things we do. Just like any other property.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, I think the amount of effort that would go into a conservation restriction is a little bit more than necessary. That's my feeling.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be satisfied upon advice of town council to accept the deed restriction, with my reasoning being that it's going to be in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Joe?
I'm supporting the deed restriction approach.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Yeah, RJ, go ahead.
I'm just gonna make one last point. So the deed restriction, it's got a bunch of language saying, don't do this, and it's going to be going with the property forever. But we got into this whole thing with them doing something that there was language in laws saying, hey, don't do this. And we're going to do this deed restriction, and it's going to be attached to the property, but it's going to be just like the wetlands bylaw and act that was violated before. So to me, the only way to be sure is to go there once a year, take a look around with permission, which we would get from a conservation restriction, and be done with it and say, okay, good, it's done. And otherwise, we're essentially just adding to the language that tells them not to do what they did. But we don't have anything other than how we got here in the first place, which was someone telling us, tipping Will off, that, there was a clear cutting. So it's, there's more paperwork involved. You got to get the state to sign off on it. You have to get the town, the select board to sign off on it. And it's got to be registered with the town, the registry of deeds, like a deed restriction. But I think we all agreed this is an egregious violation, and this is the bow on it after all the work we did with the enforcement order and the notice of intent to make sure that this property is not going to be an issue again. And I do think that this is one of the more extraordinary circumstances. This isn't a normal violation we deal with, and I don't think it's that much more of a burden to get a conservation restriction through. So that's where I stand on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
I heard the term clear cutting, which I was hoping not to hear it. I went to the Encyclopedia Britannica to get a definition of clear cutting. Clear cutting is the practice of cutting down most or all of the trees in a forest or a section of a forest at the same time, usually in a uniform manner. You don't like the encyclopedia, go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia says clear cutting is a forestry logging practice in which most of all the trees in an area are uniformly cut down. In this particular case, Bratton Engineering said there are at least 75 mature trees that are standing on that property. So they all weren't cut down. And I think it's important to say, look, if it's truly clear cutting, let it say it's clear cutting. This is not clear cutting. 30 years from now, when somebody's looking back at all of this, they'll say, oh, well, we know what clear cutting is because we have a definition for it. So let's proceed with the deed restriction.
I stand corrected, but it doesn't change my position on conservation restrictions. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we can argue about what that is, or we could just call it significant environmental destruction and get on with our day. But major violations and major loss to ecosystem services were caused by this event. So, all right, just getting back to one thing that John said about if we attempted to do a conservation restriction, would this process get harder? I don't think necessarily. Any applicant at any time, if they don't like the order that we approve, has the right to appeal. They could, anybody can do that. But it's up to us to decide what we want to do on the basis of what's going to protect our interests. So, we're not in a public meeting. We're not in a public hearing. We're not required to take public comment. Commissioners, do you have anything else to add here? Do we have everything we would need to, or should we put the order up on the screen and review it?
I was going to say, I do have that for you.
Yeah, let's put it up.
I don't know if whoa, all the windows went away.
And Seth, while you're doing that, I just wanted to note, we do recommend that you take a formal vote, in addition to your vote on the order of conditions, that you also take a formal vote to accept the deed restriction. And I had emailed Glenn Wood earlier today asking if he could add to the document to put your acceptance on the document so that, one document can be fully executed for recording at the Registry of Deeds. I didn't mean to send it to him on the same day as your meeting tonight, but we want to make sure that you end up with first of all, that you do vote to formally accept it, and then that you do end up with a document that's suitable for recording. So I just wanted to note that for you, that there's still a loose end to tie up on the instrument for the deed restriction itself.
Yes. Thank you, Attorney Pucci. I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at the order, and then I see Mr. Wood is here with his hand raised. We can get clarification from him if needed, and we have clarification from Will as well, but let's get the order actually to review first.
No clarification from me. That's I had a question.
Go ahead.
The opposite. I was just going to see I don't know if Glenn has made that edit yet, but you pretty much asked that question already. I do have the order if we'd like to look that over.
Yeah, put it up.
But I just think without having the DR with that edit included, we don't have it and it's not in the packet.
Yeah, well, let's put it up, and then we can see about doing this in a logistically reasonable fashion.
The other thing is there's intelligent attorneys present that could answer this question, but it might be possible for us to close this portion and continue the DR portion, but I have no idea. So here is our draft order for 14 Plover. This order permits the proposed restoration work required resulting from an enforcement order at 14 Plover Lane within bordering vegetated wetland in its buffer zones. A waiver is required for this project. The area did not fall within NHESP. And then we had the commission finds that a deed restriction is necessary to preserve the restoration area. Any such restriction shall remain with the property in perpetuity. And I'll change this. I had this written in a very open way before. Basically just depending on what we ended up on. And then for our general conditions, we had 18 and 19. And then our lighting condition, and then 21, all proposed plantings and/or seedings within commission jurisdiction shall be native species with no cultivars. 22, no fertilizer or agricultural chemicals applied in any area of commission jurisdiction. 23, monitoring site evaluations will be conducted during and at the end of first, second, and third growing seasons to observe vegetative health and cover. 2025, 26, and 27, monitoring reports will be submitted at the end of the growing seasons and/or prior to December 31st of that year. The reports will include an assessment of the overall status of the restoration area and planting areas and recommendations, management, replacement plant material per survivorship rates. The report will also document the presence of any invasive species and implemented or recommended management methods. 24, should the project area show less than 50% regrowth of native species within the first 2 years and 6 months of the permit, the applicant shall file a new notice or amendment for supplementing the area with native plantings and seedings. 25, all reports required annually or until COC is issued. 26, all irrigation shall be temporary and must be removed before a COC is issued or this order expires. The name and contact info for the irrigation company shall be provided to commission staff. 27, all invasive species found on site must be properly disposed of at the Nantucket landfill. 28, property owner has agreed and the commission includes as a condition of approval property owner's payment of a civil penalty under General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, in the amount of $11,100.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions, comments, additions on that? Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unless I missed it, do we have something, Will, we can write out in about removal of the deer fence so that doesn't get left behind?
So we can say, what about the all installed deer fencing shall be temporary or
Yeah,
must
just
be
say the
removed
same thing
before
as the
COC, like same exact thing.
Same thing as the irrigation, basically.
And I'm going to put the landscaper information in place of the second half too.
Okay, while I was doing that, Commissioner, yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, so when this gets closed out at the compliance stage, could we make condition 23 an ongoing condition? And then that would solve your inspection issue. They'd have to,
No,
Oh, yeah, I don't know if
not
you could
really.
do, I thought you
Not
were
really.
talking about,
can't make them keep monitoring it beyond the initial notice? I'm just
Not
curious.
really, yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, we can try, but those types of conditions
Might
aren't
not go
generally the
well.
ones that would
Yeah,
continue in
I was just
perpetuity.
thinking about that. All deer shall be removed from.
There's nothing that would really be enforceable if we did that.
All deer are temporary, I guess, if we're being, we all are.
All deer must be removed.
Well, it said they all shall be temporary and must be removed. So I'm like, we should remove some of it. Anyway, all deer fencing shall be temporary and must be removed before COC is issued. The name and contact information for I'm just gonna say the contractor responsible or company responsible. Because who knows if it will be a landscaper or a handyman or whomever.
That's fine. Commissioners, anything else? Okay. Attorney Wood, good evening. Is there something you wish to add at this point?
Yeah, a few points, thank you. Entirely agree with George that the use of a CR here is radically overblown. And you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. CRs are not used for these small violation areas. And this is small in the bigger scope of the world I live in and George lives in. Use of a CR here, even if it's a potential tool in your supposed toolbox under your bylaw, is not well thought out. If you voted to require a CR, and for argument's sake, assuming we appealed it, DEP wouldn't require a DR or a CR. So it just get into bylaw litigation and somebody wins and somebody doesn't win a year or two from now, which seems ridiculously silly. The deal is that our client has done full mitigation, is ready to pay a fine. There's going to be a deed restriction against the property with full notice to anybody in the world that owns the property in 27 years or 50 years and well beyond our lifetimes. So the DR is already more than is necessary. I also think that the commission would be setting a ridiculous precedent here for future small violations, because what's the difference here between, 20,000 square foot and 25,000 square foot or 15,000? You're going to have to, in every enforcement case moving forward, put a CR on it. And I guess my last point, actually second to last point, is that even if we agreed, if you wanted to go with a CR, which we really trust the majority of your commission votes to reject tonight and goes with the DR, this has to go to the state. I find it near to impossible that EEA is going to buy onto this as a CR. It's just not what a CR is for. So just because you think it works, you still have to get it approved by the state. And I think good luck to that. I think it's not going to be possible. I would point out that in 3 years, and I think it's something we can agree with, is that when we come in for a COC, if you want to add a continuing condition for annual inspection, put it in there. I might be retired by then, so I don't really care personally. But that's a tool in your toolbox to have continuing conditions and COCs. That's a decision for whoever's on the commission at that time if they want. And then lastly, just to George's good points about signatures, we're fine with that. We just didn't get a chance to revise it, but we surely can and will, maybe tomorrow, but more than likely, given it's a August Friday, it'll be next week, and we'll forward it along to Will and George. So for all those points, which are really significant, a DR is more than satisfactory here, and we trust that the majority of the commission will vote defined as such and follow your town council's view of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not even going to respond to most of that because we've already been wasting everyone's time. But the one thing that I will respond to is that if we want to set up any future commission for the opportunity of having perpetual site evaluations or monitoring reports, so we do need to change what the language in 23 actually says. We would need to say that monitoring site evaluations will be conducted during each growing season, and then just leave it at that. And then when the certificate of compliance is brought before this commission, the commission at that time can decide whether they want to continue that or not. If they don't continue it, it means just the first 3 years or the 6 years of the extension or however long the permit lasts, that's where you're going to get the monitoring. If they continue in perpetuity, then we will theoretically be getting those monitoring reports in perpetuity. If the owner of this property or the holder of that CUC ever decides to stop submitting those monitoring reports, I can promise you trying to enforce on a continuing condition on a COC of a long closeout order is going to be very difficult. But if it makes you guys feel good to do that, we can do it. And might as well. So it's up to you all to decide. Anybody? John?
I don't think it would hurt. They offered, so let's do it.
All right. Will, you want to change the language there?
So we're going to take out the mention of years, and then
Yeah, we're just going to
just
say
say during
monitoring
each.
site evaluations will be conducted during and at the end of each growing season. Period.
I just want to make sure that, hold on. Seemed like I deleted more than I meant to, but I think we're good.
During and at the end of each growing season.
Oh.
Is that forever?
That's forever if the commission at the
If they
time of the COC decides to continue it in perpetuity. We, as a commission, cannot constrain future commissions to do anything. It's up to the commission at that time to decide. They could decide to not continue it, or they could decide to continue it, and we are not able to influence or constrain them in any way. It's up to them. Or it might be up to us if it's the same people, but it's still not our job right now to make that determination.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right.
All right. So I don't think are able to make a vote. It's my understanding from Attorney Pucci that we want the updated deed restriction from Mr. Wood that has the signature pages and the text requested by town council added. I know that all happened today, so I don't believe Mr. Wood has been able to, Attorney Wood's been able to do that. Attorney Wood, is that correct?
Oh, but I mean, it's just a signature block, Seth. I mean, it's non-substantive. I mean, it's just a signature block at the end by having all you guys have signatures and it gets notarized. I mean, I don't know why we would have to continue this out a couple more weeks for something as de minimis. That seems silly.
Okay, Attorney
Seth-
Pucci, do you agree
Seth-
with that statement?
Seth, can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Unless you're seeing a reason that you can't vote on the order of conditions, I don't see why you can't vote that tonight. I think you could also vote acceptance of the proposed TR with the, the language discussed tonight to add to the document. I tend to agree with Glenn. I don't see a reason why you'd need to continue a vote on the order of conditions because, you've got it all adequately conditioned in there. The property owner can't now just go away and not give you the deed restriction. And, it's not just a ministerial act on the acceptance. The importance of the acceptance on the document is that then it shows, in the registry on record that the commission accepted the deed restriction. So, for future reference in the registry. So that's why it's important substantively, but I don't think it holds up voting the order of conditions tonight.
Okay, thank you. That's your area of expertise, not mine, so I trust you. So it seems like 2 votes are needed. The first vote that is needed is a motion. We would need a motion to accept the proposed deed restriction with the added language. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Second.
Mike and Joe for the second. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
No.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries 6 in the affirmative with 1 opposed. And now, if there are no additional comments, questions, or concerns about the order of conditions, we need a motion to approve and issue the order of conditions as amended. Is there a motion to that
So moved,
effect?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
So moved,
Linda.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski, Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Have a good rest of your night. All right, so we'll move on. We have finished the orders of conditions. We'll go on to the request for determination of applicability, which we have 1. That's at the Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 55 Warren's Landing, represented by Liz Phelps. Liz, hello again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Liz Phelps, representing Nantucket Islands Land Bank on this request for determination of applicability to remove dead wood at 55 Warren's Landing Road. The property is located on the west side of Warren's Landing Road, and it contains a trail system, parking lot, and dinghy storage. The resource areas are coastal beach along Nantucket Harbor that transitions to a thin section of dune on the western side of the property, and then salt marsh to the south. The vast majority of dead wood that we're looking to remove is outside the 100-foot buffer to the resource areas. But we may want to do a little bit between the 50 to 100 foot if that's feasible. So we're requesting a determination for that. The work would be almost entirely mastication. If chipping is to be done, the chips would be removed from the site. And live understory would only be masticated to the extent necessary to get to the dead wood. There's a significant amount of dead standing and fallen trees and brush. So we're looking to remove that to clean up the property and also to reduce to some extent the fire and safety hazards that dead standing wood poses. We would not be removing everything. We would leave the dirt, the more sturdy snags for habitat. But happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Liz. Commissioners, questions or comments? Will, do you have a recommendation for us?
I do, yes. I might have just covered it up with 8 million other papers, of course.
Let us know what it is.
We have our 2 negative determinations. They were asking the 2 questions, so the regs and the bylaw, same question. So we have a -2. The work described in the request is within an area subject to jurisdiction under the act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter the area. Therefore, said work does not require filing. And a -3, which is the work described in the request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regs, but will not alter an area subject to jurisdiction under the act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of an NOI subject to any conditions as necessary. So -3, -2.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to issue the RDA with the -3 and -2 determination?
So moved.
Thank you, RJ. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli.
Aye.
RJ Turcott.
Aye.
Joe Plandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to minor modifications. We have the land bank at 70, 72, and 74 Washington Street, SC 483907, represented by Liz Phelps again. So go ahead.
Thank you again. This is a permit that was issued, I think, during the last hearing, SE 48-3907 for pruning a groundsel shrub at 72 to 70 to 74 Washington Street. So one of the conditions of the permit was that we needed to submit a vegetation management plan as a minor modification, which we have submitted as part of this request. It basically just describes how the pruning will be done in accordance with the local regulations and Appendix D, the view shed management guidelines for pruning. The details are provided in the plan. We wouldn't be doing this pruning until the winter time, but since we just received the permit, we wanted to get the plan in so that we would be all set for pruning when the time comes. But I'm happy to answer any questions or go into more detail if you would like.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments? All right. If not, is there a motion to accept and issue approve and issue the minor modification?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Linda.
Second.
Thank you, John, for the second. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Artie Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to 72 Pocomo Nominee Trust at 7248-3754, represented by Brian Madden. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this minor modification is for some updated landscaping details for an order that was issued on April 10th, 2024 for some redevelopment on site. And so the minor mod is to adjust the limit of work shown as the proposed edge of disturbance on the landscaping plan and kind of reorientation of some of the proposed plantings, native shrubs, and native meadow mix that were part of the original approval, and basically to allow for a grass path for future beach sand delivery access associated with the order for the shoreline stabilization project that was approved last February. Some very subtle changes to the limit of work, but again, it's all going to be revegetated in and around that area. And that path is proposed to be reestablished with a native meadow mix and mowed once a year. And that's it.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve and issue the minor modification?
So moved.
Second.
Tim and Mike.
Second.
By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Archie Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. And then we have 36 Lily Street LLC, 36B Lily Street, SC 483597, also represented by Brian Madden.
Thank you very much. For the record, Brian Madden, this is for an order that was issued January 13th, 2023 for construction of a single-family home, relocation renovation of a secondary structure with additional site improvements. The minor revisions to the project as depicted on the site plan show some minimal adjustments to the footprint of the single-family home, mainly kind of the orientation, configuration of the porches, entryways. There's an extension of a stone walk along the west side of the property that was initially going to stop at that front porch for the larger structure. There's a installation of a wood deck between the two structures outside the 50-foot buffer zone. That was replacing a previously approved patio and lawn area. There's some updating landscaping details, and the driveway parking area got extended out a little bit in front of the house. And then in lieu of a reinforced grass driveway, was installed with a gravel surface. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? I remember the commission at the time being very adamant about the need to have the reinforced grass driveway for the appropriate drainage and wetland functions with the associated Lily Pond wetland in the area. I'm personally not comfortable with that one. That was probably pretty easy to reestablish from gravel to that grass pave, but I would ask the applicant to do that. Yeah, anybody, go ahead.
I'd be in support of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim?
I'll support that too.
All right. Any other questions, comments, additions from the commissioners? Okay. Brian, are you willing to reach back out to your client to see if they would be willing to reestablish the driveway with the grass pave?
Yeah, and so Will, if you just scroll down a little bit just for clarification purposes. So I think it's just cut out a little bit. Yeah, so the turnout that we're talking about is the extension into the way. If the majority of the commission would like to see that converted back to the original approval, being the grassed, reinforced grass turnout, then we can certainly complete it and incorporate it into the final COC request. So we can remove that from the minor mod request.
Okay. So at this point, we have a notification from the representative that they're willing at this point to remove the gravel turnout from the minor modification request. So at this point, we need a motion to issue and approve all of the other elements in this minor modification request. Is there said motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. By roll call vote, Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
Roger Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. And I'm just going to make a note for Will to keep an eye on this for the certificate of compliance to ensure that that happens correctly prior to a cert.
Thanks so much.
Thank you as well. And speaking of certificates of compliance, we'll move on in our agenda to certificates of compliance. We have two different ones today. The first is Stark Point LLC at 16 Easton Street, SE 483566. Says Paul Santos, but we may have Chloe Coggins with us today.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Chloe Coggins on behalf of the applicant Stark Point LLC. They wish to close out the order of conditions SE 483566, which permitted the removal of existing structures, construction of 3 new structures, decking, stairways, and modification of a pervious driveway, with associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to a coastal bank. There was also an amendment to the order to include subsurface vaults and additional storage. There was another amendment to include a detailed landscape plan. And then lastly, there was a minor modification for the installation of 20 geothermal wells for a closed loop system. Everything has been completed, and I will take any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? If not, Will, have you been out to the site and do you have a recommendation for us?
Yes, I have. I'm recommending we issue the permit. I do have, sorry, issue the COC. I do have a million amendments, but we just have conditions 18 and 19. So no continuing conditions on this permit recommended.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve and issue the certificate of compliance with no ongoing conditions?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Archie Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Planowski,
Aye.
Tim Breen,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Hold on. Aye.
Seth Ingberg, aye. That carries unanimously. And we'll move on to Nyland and Logue.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Prior to my earlier statement, I am actually recused from this one.
Okay. 93 Sankey Road, SC 48 3690, with Commissioner Mizzarelli recused. Chloe, you can take this away.
All right, thank you. All right, another certificate of compliance request. Chloe Coggins, Nantucket, on behalf of the applicant Jonathan Nyland and Catherine Logue. They're wishing to close out SE 48 3690. This order of conditions permitted the renovation of an existing structure with associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. Everything was completed. The only thing of note is that the existing outdoor shower, as shown on the plan, which was originally within the 50-foot no build, has slightly shifted to the west facing side. And that is it. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Will, have you been out to the site and you have a recommendation for us?
I have been out there. I'm recommending issuance of the COC. I did have 2 continuing conditions. We have condition 20 that all plantings within commission jurisdiction shall be native species with no cultivars, and 21, which is our lighting condition directed away from resource area and in compliance with chapter 102.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve and issue the certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions 20 and 21?
So moved.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Tim, for the second. By roll call vote, Archie Turcott.
Aye.
Joe Planowski.
Aye.
Tim Breen.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye.
Aye.
Of those sitting, that carries with 6 in the affirmative and Commissioner Mizzarelli recused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on in the agenda to extension requests. We have one, which is for the Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 17 Commercial Wharf and New Whale Street. This is SE 48 2885. And says Peter Viteri on here, but potentially might be Liz Phelps.
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Viteri unfortunately could not join because he had a scheduling conflict, but I will represent Nantucket Islands Land Bank on this extension request for permit SE 48-2885 for our site known as Petrol Landing. The permit was to repair and restore an existing stone revetment, install a gangway and floating dock, boardwalks, landscaping, grading, and associated work on the property. Our attorney did submit a letter explaining the tolling analysis that was done to calculate the permit expiration date. But we determined that the permit is currently still valid and expires on September 11th, 2025. So we are requesting an extension of 1 year to September 11th, 2026. I can try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? This has been the most complex permit in Nantucket's history, I believe. But apart from that, is there a motion to approve the 1-year extension request?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Archie Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And with that, we'll move on to other business. The first item is approval of minutes, which I don't believe we have any to approve. Then monitoring reports, which I don't believe we have any monitoring reports. So we'll go to committee reports. Crack, take it away.
Nothing new, thank you.
All right. CPC,
Just have the big community meeting coming up here in August, so that's it.
sounds good. NP and EDC?
So we met on Monday and had a Safe Streets presentation. And we elected new officers with Abby DiMolina being the chair and myself as the vice chair.
That's good.
Mike?
Thank you.
And the Harbor Plan Update Committee.
We have a final draft. And we have the public forum on the 14th of August. And we're plastering the town with the flyer. But Seth, I want you to read it because you were involved way back. And I want you to read it in detail. If there's anything in there you need to flag, you need to tell me. But it's going to be that. And the comment period from the public goes to August 31st.
Thank you. Yeah, planning on doing that. I looked at the draft already and I saw my name was listed on the report with a nice little asterisk that says term ended before plan was finished. So yeah, they got me.
Well, there you go. Your claim to fame there.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I recommend that everybody attend that public forum on Thursday, August 14th. It's here in this room, correct, Linda?
Yes.
And what's the
in that
time of
room.
that again?
Well, it was wrong. I think it is 5 to 7.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I think that's where it was changed to. I think it's 5 to 7.
All right. Great, thank you. So we'll move on to enforcement actions. Will, do you have any new and emerging enforcement actions for us?
I don't right now, and I did have 14 Plover agendaed, but I'm assuming we are done.
I think we're probably all set on that.
Do you notice how hesitant I was to say that? But
Yeah.
so nothing for now.
Okay. Commissioners' comments.
I won't be here next, I won't be here next week. I'll be in Costa Rica, so, and out of range of going on some fishing trip, so.
Okay.
Poor guy.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Staff reports.
Not much to say tonight, other than thank you guys for your perseverance through a pretty lengthy enforcement process that we just went through. Will be monitored and ongoing and everything like that, but I do, I feel like we really achieved at least the majority of the goals that everybody had, and it was a bit of a process, so thanks for sticking it out, everybody, and appreciate that.
Thank you. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Seeing as how Commissioner Williams has left the meeting, we can take a roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstain? That carries unanimously. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.